Good morning, everyone, and good morning, sir. I am Nova B. Pilit, the first reporter about the late Middle Ages. Introduction. The late Middle Ages or late Medieval period was a period of European history lasting from AD 1300 to 1500. The late Middle Ages followed the High Middle Ages and preceded the onset of the early modern period and in much of Europe the Renaissance. Around 1350 century of prosperity and growth in Europe came to a halt. A series of famines and plagues, including the Great Famine of 1315 to 1317 and the Black Death, reduces the population to around half of what it had been before the calamities. Three main pillars of medieval period: feudal system, political or military. A peasant or worker known as a vassal received a piece of land in return for serving a lord or king, especially during times of war. Manor system, economic and social system by which the peasants of the medieval Europe were rendered dependent on their land and on their lord. Roman Catholic Church. Despite the crisis, the 14th century was also a time of great progress in the arts and sciences. Following a renewed interest in ancient Greek and Roman texts that took root in the High Middle Ages, the Italian Renaissance began. Three main pillars of medieval period: feudal system, political or military. A peasant or worker known as a vassal received a piece of land in return for serving a lord or king, especially during times of war. Manor system, economic and social system by which the peasants of the medieval Europe were rendered dependent on their land and on their lord. Roman Catholic Church. Despite the crisis, the 14th century is also a time of great progress in the arts and sciences. Following a renewed interest in ancient Greek and Roman texts that took root in the High Middle Ages, the Italian Renaissance began. Cause and impact of the Black Death. Causes: Mongols increases trade between Asia and Europe, leading to flea-infested rats traveling in the Silk Road. Movement from rural to urban areas increased. Famine in early 1300s lead to chronic malnutrition, infant mortality increasing, lower birth rates, and high risk of disease. Impact: labor shortage lead to wages going up when there was work. Aristocrats respond by passing statute of laborers to limit wages, which lead to the peasant revolt of 1358. Art became preoccupied with death and mortality. And next, anti-Semitic feelings grew as Jews were blamed for the Black Death. Next, peasant revolts. In 1358, Jacquerie peasant revolt in northern France. Class tensions were high. Landed nobles wanted to hold onto their political privileges. In 1381, English peasant revolt was more a product of rising expectations. King Richard II promised to give in to the peasant demands, only to go back on this word and arrested hundreds. Peasant and urban revolts sometimes resulted in short-term gains but were mostly quickly crushed by the ruling class. The changes brought about by this development have led many scholars to view this period as the end of the Middle Ages and the beginning of modern history and early modern Europe. However, the division is somewhat artificial, since ancient learning was never entirely absent from European society. As a result, there was a developmental continuity between the ancient age and the modern age. Some historians, particularly in Italy, refer not to speak of the late Middle Ages at all, but rather see the high period of the Middle Ages transitioning to the Renaissance and the modern era.
Cause of Hundred Years' War, 1337–1453. Dispute over the territory of Gascony. Dispute over the right of succession of the French throne. Conduct and course of the war. French army in 1337 relied heavily on army naval cavalry and considered foot soldiers and coastmen as socially inferior. English army include pleasant and paid foot soldier army with picks and longbow. Fighting went back on for until 20 years. Truce was signed in 1396. Joan of Arc, born in 1412 to Pleasant from the village of Campaign. Deeply religious, Joan experienced vision and believed her favorite saint and commanded her to free France and have to adopt crown king. Captured to death and heretic and burned at the stake in 1431. End of the war. Defeats of English army and Normandy and equity ultimately lead to France's victory. France's success was contributed to use the cannon, a new weapon made possible by invention of gunpowder. 1453, only part of France that was left in English. This is Rosemary K. Rodrigo, and thank you for listening.